Olympic Strength Training Program. What does that mean? Today I want to present to you the advanced strength training program that we used with our athletes in the lead up to the Olympic Games in London in 2012, and specifically with our BMX riders. And for those of you who do not know what BMX is, similar to me when I started working with these athletes, I've prepared a separate video with the best impressions from the London Olympic Games, so feel free to watch that. Once you watch that video, you can see that these guys are pretty powerful and explosive, and they definitely need to have a solid foundation of strength. So therefore, I designed that strength training program to give them the best chances to succeed at the Olympic Games. For those who have seen my website, and if you get to the website, you see that wonderful pop-up where you can enter your email, subscribe, and you will get the strength training program sent to you. So I have had a couple of questions from people who wanted to know how that program works. For that reason, I present it here to you, and I also want to present a little bit the thought process behind that program, because it's a bit of an advanced program. But first and foremost, yes, who I am. Yeah, my name is Christian. I have a website, Train Like an Olympian, which is dedicated to knowledge sharing, and I'm presenting a little bit of what we are doing with our Olympians and what you can basically learn from what we're doing. So you see the web address, christianbosse.com, and there is a few things about me. I'm a father of 2 wonderful children, I'm a husband, and obviously I'm a passionate coach. So who am I? Yes, that is me. So just a quick overview of my professional experience. If we start on the far right, I've worked for the Chinese Olympic Committee, and I was responsible for the Tennis Federation, for the Davis Cup team and the Federations Cup team. Below that you see the Hong Kong Tennis Association on the bottom right. I did a consultancy for the Hong Kong Tennis Association, and I helped them with their long-term athlete development outline. So with the idea of how do we get the players that enter the federation at the ages of 10 to the professional level of tennis players. Then you see the High Performance Tennis Center. That was actually my first job. That was a professional tennis academy in India. I did that from 2004 to 2006. Next to that, the International Tennis Federation. I was giving workshops for the International Tennis Federation. And then you see the federation, the Catalan Tennis Federation, the International Tennis Center of the ITF, and the Spain Tennis Academy. This is what I did from 2006 to 2008. And after that, I went to the British Lawn Tennis Association in 2008. And since 2010, I'm here in the Netherlands, working with the Olympic athletes of the Netherlands. So what's the agenda for today? As I said, first and foremost, for those who already requested me to explain how the program works, I give you a short overview of how the program works. For those who are interested how the thought process is behind the program, this will be by far the longest part of that presentation. Also the results of the strength training program. And we finish with a few training impressions from that period leading up to the London Olympics. So how does the strength training program works? So I've prepared a few videos to take you through that program. Just have a look. So now we're in the program, and I give you a quick overview how it works. So you see the navigation up here, and you also see the tabs down here. So basically the program is structured into 3 phases. Yeah, you can also see, if you click this one, you get to phase 1. Phase 1 had 3 sessions. Here you get to phase 2. Same thing, 3 sessions. And phase 3, also 3 sessions. So let's start here. The predicted 1RM from phase 1 to 3. Predicted, because I want you to fill in what your goal is after 10 weeks. So these are the exercises we focused on. So we have the power clean, the power snatch, the split jerk, the bench press, the bench row or bench pull, the back squat, and the front squat. And if you fill in your goal here, let's say you want to be able to do 120 kilos, then it automatically calculates the rolling 1RM for the period. And it also gives you the weight that you should be lifting in every training session. Yeah, so we filled in the power clean here. So this is phase 1. We filled in the power clean, and then it says in the first session what you need to do, second session, third session, and also for phase 2 you see the same. Yeah, so the weight is already filled out. Also the clean pull is this one here. The clean pull is calculated on the power clean max, and the same is true for phase 3, where you can see you're finally working towards your 1RM. So yeah, please fill out the goals, whatever you want to do. 120, I just make something up now. 90, split jerk, whatever, 110, bench press 105, bench row 110, back squat 160, front squat, let's say 140. Yeah, it automatically, it automatically calculates all the weights, and then you can see the training weight already filled out in the sheet. Yeah. So if we go a little bit further down, you see some exercises that are not filled out. So this is because we used that as assistant exercises and we didn't work with the rolling 1RM or rolling predicted 1RM. So here you need to fill in your normal weight, the normal 1RM that you have for an RDL, or the single leg squats is obviously on the box with body weight. Yeah, so some exercises are not filled out, and this is then where you have to use your old 1RM, or you need to find out what your 1RM is and then calculate the given percentage from that. So if you choose to work with different exercises, you need to change it here. Yeah, so I'm not very good in making things up, so I just say, so this is exercise XYZ, this is exercise ABC. But then you also need to see that this is where the power clean was. So then you need to go back here and change it, obviously, in the corresponding field. Yeah, so we have the power clean here, and then you make this into XYZ. Same here. Yeah. And then you can also use your own exercises if you're not familiar with these exercises that I've prescribed for my athletes. Yeah. So this is how it works. Yeah, very simple. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. You have the same navigation up here. And you need to start to enter your 1RM, so the maximum weight that you want to be able to lift after 10 weeks in these rows. And then the rest is calculated for you. And then you have planned the work, and now you need to work the plan. Good luck, and let me know what you think. So in the next step, we want to look at the thought process behind the training program. And I want to explain you a little bit the details behind that program and how the program works, and going into detail on a few training principles. So to start with, this was leading up to the London Olympics, the annual plan. And the way you read it is similar to a calendar. You see the month at the top. You see the calendar weeks. You see the date when the week begins. So basically this is the Monday. You see the competitions here and the events. Basically this is the events, not the competitions. The events can also be a training camp. And yeah, for every good program, start with the end in mind. This is a lesson I've taken from the book from Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. So how does that work? So we start with the end in mind, which are the Olympic Games. And from that, we see what other important competitions we have, World Championships and World Cups. And then there is a countdown, as you can see, towards the first peak event and a countdown toward the second peak event. So the first peak event was the beginning of the season with the first World Cup, and the second peak event obviously leading up to the Olympics. And you can see I've used a little bit of a color code for myself. And then obviously the red code is then the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks leading up to the London Olympics. And then, yeah, a small countdown because there was another World Cup at the end of the season. Again, that was of minor importance, but again, it's still a World Cup. So let's break it down. You can see different phases. Yeah, so the countdown and the periods were broken down into different phases. So phase 1 to 12 basically. And let's have a look at the intensity. And as you can see, this is the intensity. I've given it color code. The lighter, the easier, and the darker, the heavier. But again, it's a subjective intensity, and I'll get into detail in a little bit. So let's have a look. So basically, as I mentioned, lighter color, light intensity, a bit of a darker color, medium intensity, and the darkest color is the highest intensity. So let's start. What is the program about? Yeah, now since you understand where we started with the annual plan and have broken that year down into different periods and different phases. So the strength training program that I present to you, or that you might have already downloaded, I also put the link into the description, so feel free to download it. Basically, we're talking about this 10 weeks at the beginning of the season, where the goal was really to build the highest possible levels of maximum strength. So we're talking about the period of November, December, and January. Oh, there's a small typo, January with 2J. And these 10 weeks are broken down into 3 phases. Phase 1 is 3 weeks, phase 2 is 4 weeks, and phase 3 is 3 weeks. So let's zoom into these phases. So this is how you can have a look at the distribution of the volume. And you can see the calendar weeks down here. So week 46, 47, 48 until week 3. The volume, so the number of total reps. And this is how you read it. So in week 46, there was a number of total reps of somewhere between 300 and 350. So probably 320 total reps. In the next week, there was around 400 total reps and so on. So the volume is just one thing. Let's also have a look at the intensity. And we have the average intensity on the right side. So the average intensity is expressed as percentage of the 1RM. And then very similar, you read here. So in the first week, in week 46, the average intensity was somewhere around 74%, increased to 76, 77%, 78, 79%, and so on. Yeah. So as a recap, we're talking about these 3 phases, and let's have a look specifically at the phases. So again, here volume and intensity, and then this is phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. 3 phases. And now we want to have a more of a detailed look into phase 1. I hope I'm not running through it too fast, but let's continue. So phase 1, let's move into phase 1. So as you can see, phase 1, week 1. So how do you read that chart? We have the total number of repetitions again on the left side, and the average intensity as percentage of the 1RM on the right side. See, there's another typo. Instead of percent, it says a 5. So I forgot to press the shift, it seems. Anyway, so the way you read it, again, around 110 repetitions in the first session and an average intensity of 77%. In the second session, total repetitions of 103 and an intensity of just above 72% 1RM. And in the third session, 108 total repetitions and just above 73% of the 1RM. So, why is that important? There is such thing that is called the heavy, light, medium principle. And that principle, to my knowledge, the first one who wrote about it was Bill Starr in his book, The Strongest Shall Survive. Bill Starr was one of the first guys who basically wrote a little bit about strength training and how to monitor strength training, programming, advanced programming. Rippetoe has taken that concept of heavy, light, medium, and to the best of my knowledge, I think CrossFit has based quite a bit of their theory and practical application on that principle. So what it says, heavy, light, medium. On a heavy session, there should follow a light session, and on a light session should follow a medium session. And if you look at that, this is the heaviest session, the most number of repetitions, and the highest intensity. This is the lightest session, so the lowest volume, lowest number of repetitions, and also the lowest average intensity. And this is the medium session, which is just somewhere between the heavy and the light session. So here you can see the application of the heavy, light, medium principle. Session 1, heavy. Session 2, light. Session 3, medium. If we look at week 2 of that program, so phase 1, week 2, you can see the same trend. Heavy, most repetitions, and highest intensity. Light, least repetitions of this week, and lowest intensity. And medium, again, somewhere between the heavy and the light session. And week 3, so still phase 1, week 3, we see the same trend. Heavy, light, and medium. Yeah. So the idea behind that is if you follow that heavy, light, medium principle, you give yourself the best chances for adaptations with regards to your strength gains or muscle gain or whatever you're looking at. So let's wrap it up. Phase 1. Yeah, so these are the 3 weeks next to each other. And again, it's a bit heavy on graphs here, but I take you through that. So this is the volume in week 1. Yeah. So session 1, week 1, 100 repetitions, 110 repetitions. Week 2, a little bit lower. Oh, excuse me. So let's go back. Sorry. Volume week 1, session 1. Volume week 1, session 2. And volume week 1, session 3. And then the same is true for volume week 2 and volume in week 3. Again, everything based on the total number of repetitions that you can see on the left side. So, the heavy, light, medium principle in theory. Some of you might have seen, sorry if I go back, excuse me. So if I go back, you can see that the highest volume is obviously in week 2. And the heavy, light, medium principle in theory and practice just says as long as you stick to that sequence of heavy, light, medium, you can basically play around with it. So it can be heavy, light, medium, but it can also be medium, heavy, and light. So the idea is, on a heavy session should follow a light session, or on a heavy week should follow a light week. And then you can also make it a light, medium, heavy sequence. Considering then after the third week or third session of heavy, you have another light session. Yeah, so it's not that strict that session 1 or week 1 needs to be heavy and session 2 or week 2 needs to be light. You can play around with that. And this is what you see here. So you see this is heavy. The week 2 is the heaviest week. Week 3 the lightest week. And week 1 is the medium week. So again, you see the heavy, light, medium principle. If you start heavy, light, and medium. So let's add the intensity, because volume is just one thing, but the intensity is also important. So what you can see here, this is the average intensity of week 1. So we went through that. Session 1, highest intensity. Session 2, lowest intensity. Session 3, medium intensity. The same you see for week 2 and week 3, the same pattern. Now the question arises, how is that light? Obviously it's light in volume, but it's the highest in intensity. So for that I need to introduce another concept of tonnage and volume load. So tonnage is basically the total weight lifted, which is the weight multiplied by the repetitions multiplied by the sets. Let's look at it, how that looks in practice. So this is the training plan. If you haven't downloaded it, feel free to download it. And so this is the example of phase 3. You see session 1 in week 3. You see here the goals and the exercise selection. So let's have a look at this week 1 in phase 3. Yeah. So this is the tonnage. So you can see the first exercise, the power clean, and the tonnage is basically this. So let me talk you through that. So how do you calculate the tonnage? The tonnage is the product of the repetitions multiplied by the weight. So 2 repetitions multiplied by 103.5 is 207. Yeah, so basically the tonnage is just the calculation of the amount of weight multiplied by the number of repetitions. And this is then the tonnage per set. And then you have 3 sets. And then obviously you have a tonnage per exercise, which is the sum of the sets. Yeah. So per exercise. So for the first exercise, for the second exercise, and for the third exercise, which is then the volume. You can also, the tonnage per session is then obviously the sum of all exercises. Yeah. So exercise number 1, 529. Exercise number 2, 437. Exercise number 3, 736 equals 1702. So this is the tonnage for that day. And then obviously you can make that for all 3 sessions, add it up, and then you get a tonnage for the week. You can then add it up into a tonnage for months, and so on and so on. Let's have a look at the volume load. The volume load is a very similar calculation, and basically it's the product of volume and intensity. So volume multiplied by average intensity. Let's have a look how that works. Same example. Here we see the volume load. So how do you calculate the volume load? Again, product of reps or volume multiplied by intensity. 2 reps multiplied by 90% or 0.9 is a volume load of 1.8. So again, there's a small typo here. It's not 180, it's 1.8. Yeah, and then again, you have a volume load per set and a volume load per exercise, which is the average of the 3 sets. And you can see, because the set and rep scheme and intensity is constant in all 3 exercises, the volume load is the same. If you remember, the tonnage was different because due to a different load lifted in the power clean compared to the bench press or the back squat. So you have a different value in the tonnage, but in the volume load, the value is the same. So, and that brings us then to the question tonnage versus volume load, which is better? As always, there's nothing better. It just depends what you want to look at. So the tonnage, for example, is useful for inter-individual comparison. So inter-individual comparison refers to comparing 2 individuals. So even if 2 individuals work at the same intensity in percent of the 1RM, same repetitions, same sets, the volume load, the tonnage will be different. So the ones that are stronger will obviously have a higher tonnage than the ones that are less strong. So you can have an inter-individual comparison, but also, which is important, the intra-individual comparison, which is the comparison from one individual with himself or herself. And that becomes important if you want to compare from season to season, and hopefully you see an increase in tonnage from one season to the next. The only exception, and there is still a little bit of a debate about that, some people also use a deload season after an Olympic year. So then you might see the tonnage going down. Other than that, you hopefully see an increase in tonnage from one season to the next season. So the volume load gives you a more in-depth overview of volume and intensity. So this is basically the difference. And if you really want to get into that topic, I would recommend to read this piece from Greg Huff. It's a very, very in-depth piece on how you can quantify workloads, and it's worth reading. That goes really into detail how you can quantify workloads, how you can manipulate and how you can calculate workloads for the best possible results. So that was a bit of an excursus. So where did we stop? Let's get back to that question. So we said, how can this be a light week? Yes, the volume is the lowest, but the intensity is the highest. And for that, I introduced the concept of tonnage. Because if you now look at the tonnage, you see a little bit of a different trend. Again, we see here the phase 1, week 1 to 3 or week 3. And then, it's week 1 to 3. And then you can see that even though the intensity is highest, the tonnage on the left side is lowest, and the volume load on the right side is also lowest in week 3. Yeah, so remember, tonnage is the total weight, all reps and sets multiplied by the weight and summed up, and the volume load is then the total volume in repetitions multiplied by the average intensity. And here you can see again, medium, heavy, light. So even though we just look at volume and intensities, if we want to have a deeper look into the things, then we need to look at volume, load, and tonnage. To wrap it up, phase 1, so you can see here, phase 2 and phase 3. and you see the pattern of medium, heavy, light. You see here a pattern of medium, medium, heavy, light. The reason for that is pretty simple, because it's week 52, so that is Christmas and New Year, so we planned the lightest week into that. And then we have a medium, heavy and very heavy with the maxing, testing out the new 1RM in week 3. So let's have a look at the results. So we had 4 athletes going to the Olympics. So let's have a look at athlete number 1. So this is a pre and post comparison. So before the training program and after the training program. You can see the exercises down here. And then the 1RM on the left side for each exercise. And the blue bars are the pre, so before the training program. And this is post, after the training program. Again, 1RM on the left side. And then you can see in this particular exercise, athlete number 1 improved by 9.3%. Athlete number 2, 9.3 in the power clean, 6.9% in the power snatch, 12.2% in the split jerk, 11.4% bench press, 14.3 in the bench row, 11% in the back squat, and 18% in the front squat. Let's have a look at athlete number 2. Same thing. Around 16-17%, 21% in the power snatch, 9% in the split jerk, 15% bench press, 24% bench row, 18% back squat, and 24% in the front squat. Athlete number 3. So 11 to 12%, 14 to 15%. Split jerk, that particular athlete couldn't do. Again, it's BMX. You have seen the training impressions. There's always some crashes going on, broken collarbones and whatever. So that athlete was just not able to do the split jerk. And then obviously you don't test it and train it. So bench press 12%, 15% in the bench row, and again almost 15% in the back squat, and 16% in the front squat. And then athlete number 4, 14%, 36%. Yeah, what is that? What's that increase about? Obviously, you have to admit that it's probably not necessarily only strength gains, because the power snatch is such a technical exercise, and you can see so the initial level was quite low if you look at the left side. So we're talking about something below 40 kilos, improved to 45, 50 kilos. So this is probably the majority of this increase is due to technical advancement and improved skill. 17% in the split squat, 20% in the bench press, 33% in the bench row, 21.5% in the back squat, and 12% in the front squat. So we're talking about 7 to 35% improvements over 10 weeks. So let's have a look at a few training impressions. Unfortunately, back then I wasn't smart enough to understand that you should keep your cell phone in landscape. So I did it in portrait. So let's have a look at that training impressions from the time back then. It's around 1 minute. Yeah, so box squats, single leg box jumps. So we see the different guys here. Power cleans, box jumps from a split, a Romanian deadlift. Yeah, a combination of power clean to split jerk, the power snatch, drop jumps, again a power snatch, the power clean from the hang, again from the hang, and the plyometric hurdle jumps. So that was the program. What did we cover? So the first one was we looked how the strength training program works. Yeah, so if you want to use it yourself, you know where you have to enter the different numbers and your goals. Also, for those who were interested in the thought process behind it and the reason why that program works that well, I gave you an insight on the fundamentals and the training principles behind that program. We also looked at the result of the strength training program, and then we finished up with some training impressions. But you can definitely see much more You can definitely see much more training impressions on my website or on the YouTube channel, or also on Instagram. I try to upload stuff regularly there as much as time allows. And with that, I would like to thank you for your time. If you haven't downloaded the program and you're interested, feel free to download it. And if you have any questions with regards to that presentation, please leave a comment below. Subscribe to the channel in case you don't want to miss any update.